And tonight on the Daily Wrap, the president gets his nuclear deal with Iran done, but will Republicans block it? Donald Trump speaks out on the nuclear deal as he continues rising in the polls. And disturbing news coming out of the VA about veterans waiting for medical care. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Contra, joined by my co-host, Rick Unger.
Quite a day.
Yes, a big day.
I feel like I haven't stopped since 6 o'clock this morning.
You've been immersed in Iran and Tehran and everything nuclear, huh?
Amazing day.
Victory for the president?
That's a long conversation that I suspect we'll be having over the next hour.
At least the next half hour. Yeah. By the way, folks, normally you'd see Steve Malzberg at this time, but don't worry, you can catch him right after this show at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay, to Mr. Unger's right, he is a Forbes.com columnist and an Emmy winner. Daytime soap Emmy winner, from what I understand. Good for you.
The young Days of Our News.
Days of Our News. Well done. He is Bill Tucker. And finally, he's the editor of thewisdomdaily.com, and you're not. That is Brad Hirschfield. Welcome back.
Always good to be here.
We'll be needing your Israeli connection expertise thingy tonight, so we appreciate that.
We'll do that. We'll hook you up.
Okay, good. Let's get right to the Daily Download.
Because America negotiated from a position of strength and principle, we have stopped the spread of nuclear weapons in this region. Because of this deal, the international community will be able to verify that the Islamic Republic of Iran will not develop a nuclear weapon.
And so a deal is done with Iran, and as you heard, the president says it will prevent the country from developing nuclear weapons. But not everyone is buying it, starting most notably with Republican Senator Tom Cotton.
This proposed deal is a terrible, dangerous mistake that's going to pave the path for Iran to get a nuclear weapon, while also giving them tens of billions of dollars of sanctions relief, even lifting the arms embargo at a time when they're destabilizing the entire Middle East. The American people are going to repudiate this deal, and I believe Congress will kill the deal.
Rick Unger, is the senator correct in that assessment?
Well, he may or may not be correct that Congress will kill the deal. I kind of doubt it. They would have to get past a veto, which I think is unlikely. I do have to say, though, I really wish the president, in making his announcement this morning, wouldn't have said, you know, I'm interested in a robust debate. I want to hear what Congress thinks. But by the way, if they don't agree with me, I'm going to veto it. It's highly unlikely that the Senate can override that veto. In terms of whether or not the people are going to reject it, it's a fascinating question, because if you look at polls as recently as 2 days ago, the American public does appear to support a deal with Iran. Now, what makes that kind of tricky is that in the same polls, they're saying they don't trust Iran at all. 7 out of 10 people don't trust Iran, but yet they want this deal with Iran.
So, Bill, maybe the way to read into that poll is that America is war weary. We're sick of hearing about the Middle East. So, you know what? If this gets one more war out of the way, then great, and we really don't care how it gets done.
I think that's exactly right. I think they're looking, what is our option? We're going to do a war? We're not going to do that. We'll go with the deal.
Okay, quickly.
Well, I think the real issue is we are war weary, but that then contradicts the president. We didn't negotiate from strength, and not negotiating from strength is a very bad place to negotiate.
Okay, well, let's bring in Daniel Pipes. He is the president of the Middle East Forum. Daniel, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Was the president just set on getting a deal done no matter what the cost?
Precisely. I think it's arguable that Barack Obama, insofar as he has foreign policy ambitions, set them on Iran. Not China, not Russia, not Mexico, not the other countries of the world, but Iran. Bringing Iran in from the cold, having normal relations with Iran, that has been his goal through the 6.5 years. Not a bad goal in itself. The trouble is the execution, which has been execrable.
Daniel, it's Rick Unger. You know, the question that I always have, I certainly see the arguments that you would make and others who agree with your point of view would make that would be against this agreement. But the question I have to ask, during all this time that we've been negotiating it, why hasn't anybody who opposes it been able to come up with some viable, not solutions, but alternatives that the American people could look at and say, maybe we should be going that way?
Well, you have in Iran an incredibly hostile state to us. I mean, they scream out death to America just a couple of days ago with the president of the country.
Daniel, that doesn't answer my question of where are the alternatives.
There is no solution. It's really simple. When you have a country that wants aggression against you, is hostile to you, there is no deal. There's no alternative. There's no.
How do you stop a nuclear weapon from being made then?
Well, you stop it the obvious way, by bombing it to smithereens.
Then that's another option.
Well, of course, it's the only option. It's the only option. I mean, let's not play around. When you have a government like the Iranian one that seeks to destroy us and plausibly can. Have you heard about electromagnetic pulse? Have you heard about 90% of Americans dying within 1 year? This is serious business. And you have a government that simply thinks it can reach a deal with the Iranian Islamic Republic. It's just madness.
Mr. Pipes, it's Brad Hirschfield. I want to ask you about what you were just speaking about. I think it's related. It seems to me that the center pin of the president and the administration's argument was essentially to tell us that the only alternative is war, and therefore we can't accept war, right? Real sensitivity to the danger of the ends justifying the means. My concern is that while they were right to caution us about ends justifying means, they've fallen into an equally dangerous trap where the means justify the ends. That is to say, they've done the process the way they envisioned it, and as a result have convinced themselves that the product, that the ends, must therefore be good. It strikes me as a very dangerous place to be. What do you say?
I would say that a century ago, before the rise of ideologies, it would have been reasonable to have this kind of accommodation, appeasement, and think it might work. But we've lived through Hitler, we've lived through Stalin, we've lived through so many other dictators. We know by now that when you have ideological dictators, such as Khamenei in Iran, this kind of appeasement doesn't work. And yet, Barack Obama and so many others believe it will. Well, we will soon find out, won't we?
Mr. Pipes, it's Bill Tucker in New York. The practical reality is, as we were just discussing before we came to you, is the deal we got is the deal we got. And the president clearly intends to sign it. He even told them, have a robust debate, then when you don't agree with me, I'm going to veto your veto. And it really is unlikely that we're going to get any other kind of deal. This is it. So what do we do now?
The best we can do now is to exploit the opportunities to reach into Iran. If one looks back to the Soviet Union, clearly all of these connections to Soviet society, financial and cultural and touristic and person to person, did have an impact in that it led to a weakening of Soviet will. So the best we can hope for here is that something similar takes place before the Iranian leadership decides to deploy, or at least to threaten to deploy.
Daniel, speaking of the Soviet Union, when President Reagan negotiated a deal with the Soviets to clamp down on nuclear proliferation, there were the same criticisms we hear today about this deal. Was the President Reagan, that is, was he appeasing the Soviets at that time?
If I recall correctly, in the 1980s, we had a massive military buildup at the time that the Soviet Union was fracturing. The will to continue had collapsed. In this situation, it's precisely the opposite. We are cutting back everywhere militarily, and the Iranians are building, and they're going to build even more once they get their $150 billion signing bonus. So it's not like the Soviet Union in the 1980s. It's more like the Nazi Germans in the 1930s, and appeasing them didn't work.
Daniel, final question. We only have about 30 seconds. That $150 billion, do you think that could be used towards the Hezbollahs, towards the terror organizations around Israel and around the world?
It'll be used for nuclear program, for ballistic rocket program, for conventional program, and of course for the terrorist groups. Yes, the whole bunch of them. $150 billion even today goes quite a long way.
Absolutely. Well, Mr. Pipes, thank you so much. He is the president of the Middle East Forum. Appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thanks for the invitation.
Okay, so quickly around the table. Are you surprised a deal got done, Brad Hirschfield?
I'm not surprised the deal got done for exactly the reason I said. I think this administration convinced itself they did the process right. By definition, the product was right, too, and I think that's just not true.
Bill?
I totally agree with Brad. I have nothing to add to that analysis.
Well, in recent days, I thought that the chances of it getting done had gone down below 50%, so I can't say I'm surprised, but I thought it could go a different way. I still think we have a long way to go to see how this ends up.
Maybe too big to fail. Maybe too many countries were involved for it to shut down. Anyway, what do you think of the president's job as a foreign policy negotiator? Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let us know. Back with more after the break.